Greetings, everyone. I'm joining you from what is now almost snowy Denver, getting our last spring snow in here. I want to wish everyone a happy Community College Month. To celebrate and to observe Community College Month, we wanted to bring folks together, and looking at folks joining us now, it looks like we have community colleges in 5 different time zones. I'm seeing Hawaii. Oh, just saw in Alaska. So let's make it 6 time zones. So this is what we wanted to do, is bring folks together from a variety of perspectives and have a conversation on things that we all care about and things that impact the future and the success of community colleges. Our topic today, building an ecosystem focused on students who are stopping out. And I'm honored to have with us an amazing panelist. Just so you know who I am, my name is Joe Mickey. I work with many of you and have had conversations with several of you over the last 20 years. I've been spending the last 20 years in higher ed and higher ed adjacent, working with deans, provosts, faculty, vice presidents on top challenges, but primarily working on closing opportunity gaps, which is what brought me to Mentor Collective when Mentor Collective was just starting. And like many of you, I've ran mentoring programs and had the challenge of trying to help them scale and being disappointed that it wasn't easy, and also trying to track data, and that wasn't easy. And that's what drew me to a new way of thinking. So I'm excited to be representing Mentor Collective today, but the reason you all came was to hear from an innovative college who's trying to do things that we're all trying to do. And that is bringing me to my guest, Gabriela Lopez. Without further ado, would love to have her say hello and introduce the many hats that she wears.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Gabriela Lopez, and I am the director for the Office of Equity Programs at Hartnell College. The Salinas Valley Promise is one of the programs in my portfolio, and I have been in this role for a little over a year now. But prior to this, I spent 9 years as counseling faculty here at Hartnell College, other community colleges as well, and I've worked at the CSU level, the California State University level, as well as the private university settings. So like Joe, my career has really been focused on serving students, primarily students of color, first-generation students, and creating equitable access and success opportunities for them. So thank you for being here.
Getting into it, just so we have a guide for our conversation, we're going to be talking about the challenges that we all face, just to set the scene very quickly in terms of what are we trying to solve for? What are the things keeping us up at night and the things keeping the promise of community college from reaching its full potential? And then that will bring us into a case study, keeping those challenges in mind. And then we'll save plenty of time for Q&A, but again, ask questions along the way. All right, so to get us thinking in that direction, let's take a poll. You'll see it pop up on your screen now. So please select the answers that are relevant to you. So we want to know, what are the top barriers to driving student success at your colleges? And you can select more than one, or you can select all of them, which I imagine a lot of these apply. We have decentralized and siloed data. Gabriela and I were just talking about this, how the data lives in an individual college or over in academic affairs or student affairs, and it's hard to connect all the pieces. Budget constraints, when is this not a challenge in the 2-year institution world? Faculty and staff constraints, everyone's being asked to wear more hats. Lack of student belonging and engagement. It used to be you would offer pizza and people would show up to things. Is that still the case for you all? And then underutilization of student support services. We're going to get into some strategies on that. So as answers funnel in, all the above, the clear winner, not surprising, which is good because we'll use that to kind of talk about all of these things. But also lack of student engagement. I think that's something, obviously, that's a post-pandemic challenge that we're all seeing. And then tied at the bottom, faculty staff constraints, decentralized data. All right. So that's incredibly helpful. Thank you for participating. And a good segue into some challenges, and you'll see the studies that these came from at the bottom. But the things we want to touch on today are the shrinking engagement. So students not showing up the way they used to, or being engaged, online students not feeling as they belong as much as maybe they used to, growing student need. Students are not aware of basic things like advising, tutoring, the food pantry on campus. And we'll get into that and how we can do more to make sure that students feel empowered to use those things that you've already invested in as a college. We all know about the challenges facing retention and graduating students, but also limited capacity. As several of you indicated, you're being asked to do more. You don't have budget to hire more capacity. So how can you tap into capacity you already have, either through your alumni, through your students who exist on campus, who can be your greatest cheerleaders, but a lot of times are on the sidelines. So how do we tap into that? It's a good way to set up our conversation for today. Great. So getting into that data, this was a study conducted by Titan Partners. On the bottom, you'll see resources that colleges offered. If there's if the red bar is represented, that means the college offered that. So 98% of the colleges in the study offered these things. The darker teal bar is whether or not a student was aware of it. And the lighter bar is whether or not the student used it. So only 50% of students using advising, which is shocking. Students not being aware of IT, the library, mental health, career, financial aid. This sets up some of the challenges we have, both the awareness and also utilization of the things that colleges are investing a lot in for their students. That same study, if you took those answers and the bottom axis is the amount of resources that a student was aware of from 0 to 14, all of those different resources that I just showed you. And then they measured sense of belonging in that same student group. In the green, we see strongly agree from the students that they feel like they belong at this institution and they feel supported. And in the red, strongly disagree. So you can see, as the students are aware of more resources, there's a stronger connection to belonging. So you could say belonging drives resource utilization, but perhaps the reverse is true as well. As students are aware of things that exist on campus and they use them, the more they belong, which sets up our conversation for today. How do you make them aware? How do you tap into those students who are on campus already, who also might not be aware, and then get them to talk to other students and drive them towards resources? Another study, this was of 2-year community college stopouts. So you can see in 2023, as well as 2022, some of the greatest reasons students were stopping out obviously had to work, could no longer afford the program, but the third was a lack of self-motivation. And in this same study, they identified that most students had at least 4 hardships who stopped out. So this comes back to what we're trying to talk about today, the ecosystems. How do we take your tutoring, advising, food pantry, Emoja, Puente, affinity groups, and connect all of those things in a way that they talk to one another, the data is being collected, but also pointing students towards those resources to help with motivation, and also to address that it's not just one hardship that causes a student to drop out typically. All right, so the question then becomes, how do we do that? How do we address the challenge of financial challenges, students stopping out, students not engaging in the way they used to without having to hire a bunch of staff or making your staff wear 10 more hats than they're already wearing? And the answer becomes peers. This was from a study from Inside Higher Ed recently that 2-year students open up in a way differently to their peers than they do professors, advisors, alumni, religious leaders. So how can we leverage that? We've all been at colleges who have attempted this, and it doesn't always take off in the way we hope. So that is what we're going to explore today through our case study. With that, I want to turn it over to Gabriella to give us a lay of the land of Hartnell, so we have an understanding of the challenges she and her team are trying to address.
Thank you, Joe. So Hartnell College is one of the 116 California community colleges. We're a public 2-year institution. We're located in Monterey County, which can sound deceiving. We're not directly on the coast. We're a little bit further inland in the Salinas Valley. It's an agriculture-based community. We have over 75% of our students who identify as Latinx, Latine, and we'd like to say we were a Hispanic serving institution before it was a thing. 85% of our students qualify for financial aid, and our district is a single college district, but it's very spread out geographically. So for students that live at the furthest reach of the southernmost part of our district, it's about a 50-mile commute from that area, from that campus to the main campus, which looks like a 2-hour commute on a bus. So those are just some of the challenges that our students face geographically. And as an institution overall, I would say that we do a really good job of providing tailored services and interventions based on our special populations. We have a lot of different cohort programs, smaller in size in terms of the number of students that they can reach, right? We have TRIO, EOPS, Upward Bound. And as a college, though, with Guided Pathways, we're really taking an intentional look at how do we scale these services to serve a higher number of students. And the Salinas Valley Promise, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, more in depth, is one of the ways that we've been able to do that.
Great. Thank you for that context, Gabriela. So the first question we have for you is, how are you building a student success strategy that's driving belonging for everybody?
Yeah, so, as we heard in the previous slides, we know that a sense of belonging is critical for our students in terms of them feeling comfortable and feeling ready to access all the support services that our campuses offer. And so the Salinas Valley Promise has been our approach. It's our unique approach in how we help to drive that sense of belonging for our students and creating connections to support services, to faculty, to industry leaders and mentors, as well as connections through their peers. And so the Salinas Valley Promise really focuses on serving those first time in college full-time students. We ask our students to be enrolled full-time, maintain a 2.0 grade point average, and submit a financial aid application every year. We currently serve about 70% of our incoming first time in college class. And in the fall semester, we served about 70% of that group.
And can you tell us what students receive? What's in the program if they're
Yes. So super exciting. So our students receive 2 years of free tuition, a free in-state tuition. They also receive a free laptop. They have a choice of a laptop or a textbook voucher for their first. They keep the laptop for the entire 2 years, or the laptop. The textbook voucher serves them for that first year in the program. Our students also receive an extended onboarding and extended orientation in the form of a counseling student success course, or some of our students are enrolled in these other fabulous cohort programs and support services. And so if they're connected to one of our partner programs, that fulfills that requirement for them. In addition, we offer a robust offering of workshops, hands-on group work available to them, covering a variety of topics from career exploration to socio-emotional topics, how to access things like basic needs, not only on campus in the community. We offer a lot of different opportunities for them to be able to connect to the services that they need, or to resources that will be helpful to them at their point in the journey. And then that is offered through a partnership that we have with our counseling faculty, who create the schedule, and then our staff supplement that as well with collaboration with other departments and organizations as well. And then a big part of it as well is our peer mentoring. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. I do want to point out, I think Grisel is one of our amazing team members, and she's on the call today too. So I'd like to just recognize her, that she's here and support as well.
Excellent. Gabriela, as we look across the 6 items that are part of the program here, obviously some more costly than others. If you run out of laptops, or you can't provide the tuition to certain students, or they don't qualify, can they still get a peer mentor? Why did you kind of choose peer mentoring as one of the 6 things that students receive?
Yeah, so at this point, our students are able to opt in for peer mentoring. It's not necessarily required. They're strongly encouraged to do so. When we think about how can we support our students in a meaningful way, in a way that's going to even last beyond that $400 textbook voucher, or beyond the 1 year of, or the use of the life of the laptop, let's say, is just creating those one-on-one connections. and building the network for them, that support network, so that if a staff person maybe is not available to answer that question immediately, they have somebody that they can go to at any time of the day to send a message to quickly and receive that support. And so that's been a very important part of the success that we've seen in the program.
That's helpful. In talking to colleges across the country, when you talk about mentorship, it can mean a lot of different things, right? And at a two-year institution, by the time you know what you're doing, you're kind of almost out the door. So it's not like a four-year institution where you have a large pool of upper division students. So it can be tricky to pull off peer mentoring at a college and to make sure that you're pairing people who share similar, not only career pathways, but ideas and interests and backgrounds. So that becomes our next question. Is how has this evolved? Like, how big did this start off and where's it at now?
Yeah, it's definitely. So when we started working with Mentor Collective, the initial idea was, let's connect our students to industry mentors, folks that are off campus that are going to provide that career type of mentorship for them. What we noticed after the first year was that our first year students, while yes, they were interested in that eventual down the line goal of matching with a career or an industry that interested them, their immediate questions were more, where do I get my textbooks? How do I access a parking path? Where can I find a lunch voucher on campus, right? And so our industry mentors found like that they weren't able to answer those questions. And so what we've shifted to, and what we've been able to do fairly easily, is then shift to a peer mentoring model for that first year, and then focus on the career and industry connections in the second year of the program. And so at its inception, in the very first semester that we offered the promise, we had 620 students in that first fall semester. This last fall, as I mentioned, we recruited the largest class to date, and we had 1,269 first year full-time in college students in the program. And then over time, we've also evolved. We've also added that second year. So this last fall, we served close to 2,000 students in the program, and the mentoring was definitely available for all of them. Having access to the technology has allowed us to really scale this. I didn't mention in the previous question, but our team structure, we have 2 full-time staff that work with the students in this program. And so in order to be able to really service and touch all of our students in a meaningful way, we have to leverage technology. We have to leverage those peer mentorship connections in order to be able to do so. And so despite experiencing COVID, right, we launched in fall of 19, and then spring of 20, COVID happened, and being online, the platform has really allowed us to continue to offer the mentoring services, whether it's in an online, 100% online format as we were, to now where we've kind of evolved to a hybrid format where our students are able to, we also offer in-person events and in-person opportunities to connect with their peer mentors. So.
Excellent. Yeah, I was lucky enough to be part of the program, helping to run it in the early days, right before COVID. And you're right, mentors were industry mentors in the community, and literally had a Hartnell staff member go to coffee shops and try to say, hey, do you want to be a mentor, to get local folks to be there for college students and talk about their career path. And that worked. It worked in terms of engaging the community, but as Gabriela said, as the program grew, needs grew, and sense of belonging became more of the focus. And as the research was pointing out, the greatest way to impact belonging is to connect a student with someone who they see themselves in, who can help with the imposter syndrome, and then point them towards resources. So the next question becomes, how often are they actually talking, and what are they talking about?
Right. So that's one of the really great things that we're able to gauge in a real-time manner is, which peer mentors are connecting and engaging, and then what topics of the conversations are coming up, and we can see what those look like over the course of the academic year, which then allows us to be responsive. And so you'll see this is just the number of conversations and different types of engagement that we've seen over the years since we've launched, and you'll see those dips, right? So the first year was the the industry mentors, and then we transitioned to peer, then went back up again in the following year as it gained traction. 22, 23, we had a lot of staffing changes, and so the level of support that we had in the office wasn't the same, and so that's kind of what I attribute that dip to. But now you'll see, again, we've really started off, or well, the year's almost over. We're finishing out the year in a much stronger fashion, but it's definitely that upward trend, and we've set some really aggressive goals as well in our office that next year we're going to see even stronger numbers.
And just to clarify, I can't see the chat right now, but I'm sure folks are asking, how do you track this? Like, how do you know what people are talking about? We've ran mentorship programs before. We had no idea. We just paired people up. To clarify that question, to answer that question, both mentees and mentors are able to log conversations. Mentors can then log a flag. And what a flag is if a mentee says, I don't have food, I don't know how to register for classes, I'm thinking about stopping out, I don't think this is the right environment for me, things that the college could either help with resources or at least should be aware of so that they can use that data and budgeting and planning and all the things that you do to support students. The mentor is trained to flag that conversation and carry it back to the institution on Gabriella's team, and they can then act on that. So what that looks like is we recruit mentors and mentees. So we work with Gabriella and a team to design the program. You can see how a different design in 2019, and it evolved over the years from industry mentors to then include peer mentors, to include both second years as well. We then work to recruit and train mentors. So this isn't just on Gabrielle and her team. They're the face of the program. They own it. It is their program, but we are the infrastructure behind it to reach more students than they would reach on their own by contacting students by text, by recruiting them throughout the whole year. The students who need this the most usually don't have help-seeking behaviors, right? So they're not the first to sign up. They usually don't sign up until they hear about this from a friend or you've contacted them like 8 times. And so there needs to be a way to reach those students who normally wouldn't sign up and do this and make them feel like they do have time for it. The commuter students, the fully online students, those who have very little connection to campus, making sure they feel like this is something for them as well. Then the matching process, which Gabriella will speak to in a bit, we think this is the most important thing, but also the most difficult thing. When we started, it was about just kind of connecting people in their field of study, which is important. But then we saw it was even more important to connect parents with parents. So maybe across college, across schools, or across fields of study, veterans with veterans and international students with someone who can help them integrate into this new community that's very different from where they came from. And then also tracking the metrics. And so collecting those conversations, making it easy for students to log a flag without even having to log into a platform or download anything. We found through this work that students didn't want another app. No one wants another app, faculty and staff included. You all have enough things already. So we wanted this to be platform agnostic where people could use what they're already using to talk, which is texting or meeting face-to-face or Zoom or whatever they want. And then they can still log the data easily. It lives in one place. We can nudge them when they're not talking. We can give them things to talk about. So as we saw students needing more help about registering for classes, Gabriella can send a message to mentors and mentees, reminding them to sign up and how to do that. So it isn't just pairing people up and say, good luck. And then the data they get back is also not normal. There's ways to see who's talking by first generation status, by demographics, and then use that data to say 30% of our first gen students are lacking an internship in their second year because they're telling their mentor this. It's not a survey we did. These are actual conversations happening and we can see the conversations. And then using that for budgeting and planning decisions at the chancellor's level. And then also intervening, as Gabriella was saying, with each individual student who says, I'm thinking about stopping out. So this is kind of the ecosystem we've been talking about. Okay, Gabriella, next question I have for you. What impact have you seen peer mentorship on driving student success outcomes, the big picture priorities that you all have?
Yeah, so one of the beautiful things is on the dashboard. We're measuring for the sense of belonging as well as academic self-efficacy at 3 points throughout the semester. There's a pre-survey, there's a midpoint check-in, and then one towards the end of the semester. And so you'll see that this is the data from last year's cohort that we saw almost a 10% increase in sense of belonging from the start of the program to the end. And then those little call out points you'll see where there's like on that first slide, there are the 3 students that submitted low sense of belonging. You know, is it perfect? Has it captured every single student? No, but this does give us the opportunity to intervene with these 3 specific students and to, instead of throwing something at the entire group, we can do a reach out and speak to those students individually or check in with them to see how they're doing. On the next slide, you'll see that also we saw a 10% increase in academic self-efficacy from the start of the program till the end, which is critical for our students to be successful in their academic journeys. And then the next slide is the impact on our graduation rates. So we're comparing students who were first-time, full-time students and not participating in the promise of the yellow bar to those who are participated in the program. And so the difference in those graduation rates is amazing. The 2-year graduation rate, 3.9 for our non-participants to 11.7% for our promise participants. And then when we look at our 3-year graduation rates, which is really in California that, you know, we use 3 and 6-year graduation rates, those numbers are also significantly improved by students who did participate in the program. And again, this slide, we're measuring the overall participation in the program, not necessarily the different components of each, but I would, you know, mentoring is part of that intervention.
Thank you so much for sharing those 3 assessments. I want to go back to belonging because we just had a question in the chat saying, what survey did you use to assess belonging? Is it internally something you all created? Is it part of the program? Do you want to talk a bit about that, and I can chime in as well, Gabrielle?
Yeah, definitely. It's built into the dashboard. That's a Mentor Collective assessment that is pushed out through the platform to our mentees, but it is something that Mentor Collective has developed, and I'll let you talk about that part, Joe.
Yeah, so this is based on about 10 years of research, existing research and tools that have been used throughout the years on measuring belonging. And there's 3 questions on belonging, 3 questions on self-efficacy on a Likert scale from 1 to 5. And it's pushed out by text, email, social media. So we want to capture as many students as possible and reach the students who normally wouldn't respond to something like this in your other belonging tools that you use throughout the year. Gabriela can then go into the dashboard and see in real time the responses that are filtering in throughout the year. And we do this 3 times, once right when matches are made, typically over the summer before classes start, 1 halfway through the academic year, and then 1 at the end. So not only can she track, are we trending in the right direction as people have more conversations, what's more important than assessment is the intervention. She can bring up the 10 students who said, who scored a 3 or below, who don't feel like they belong or don't feel set up for success, and then have their advisors reach out or have her team reach out. And they'll usually go back through the mentors, right? So they're not parachuting in out of nowhere, but also going back through the mentors and have them check in as well. Is that right, Gabrielle?
Yes, definitely. I think that's one of the beautiful things about this tool, right, is that it's that data right at your fingertips on call, and it allows you to step in and take action in a timely manner.
And then Aaron's question, can we get the research? Yes, I do think we have a meta study that compiled a lot of the belonging research that fueled this tool that we created on belonging, but we can certainly send links. Also in some of our research, it's cited there as well. But we're always looking to evolve. Our institutions do additional assessments on completion, as Gabriela just showed. So the 2 baked into the platform are self-efficacy, or if we did a career program with industry mentors, it could be career self-efficacy. Since we used peer mentors in this case, we assess the mentors as well. That's usually a question I get at this point is, what about mentors, their students? Also, what about their belonging? And we think that's an important point that usually gets ignored, that these mentors don't have all the answers. They are also struggling. They're also trying to figure out where they want to go in life. They also don't know there's a tutoring center. They also don't know there's a food pantry. So if you can educate them, who then educate the mentees, and then assess whether or not they're more aware of these resources or they feel like a deeper part of the college, then that's important, and that doubles your impact. Some colleges use a mix of both peer mentors and industry mentors. So we might do different assessments based on what we're trying to achieve. But at the end of the day, we want to know, are we moving the needle, not just for mentees, but mentors as well? Great. All right.
The impact on our success rates for courses in the fall of 22, our first time full-time promise participants had an 11.4% higher course success rate than other full-time students who did not participate in the promise. Persistence numbers also very strong. In the fall of 22, our promise participants persisted at a rate of 89.2% from fall to spring, compared to 78.3% for other first-time full-time students. So about almost an 11% higher average than those that were not participants. And in the spring, our promise participants, in the spring of 23, our promise participants had a 6.7% higher success rate in their courses than non-participants as well.
Great. So this is kind of a good view of the assessment data to say, hey, the money we're spending on this is worthwhile, which is what the chancellor cares about. But also we're using data, Gabriella, to inform the challenges students are facing, to learn about your students, and also to reach individual students.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think we touched a little bit about this when we were talking about the flags, but I mean, for me, I'm defining equity as being able to meet the students where they are and address the needs that they have on that individual level. And so that the dashboard, or the data that we get from the dashboard, really enables us to do that by looking at what are students worrying about, what do they have questions about, and then we can, if it's a group intervention, we can offer a workshop, we can offer a webinar, we can put out information in an email or via text to get them that information. Or it might be calling up a student and doing that one-on-one intervention. But it gives us that real-time, it's a pulse, right, on what our students are thinking about, what their needs are, and then gives us the power to be able to create interventions that they need. It also, the referral process is great. Again, we're looking at serving 2,000 students with a staff of 2, with some additional support in terms of faculty as well. But what we did, and we've fine-tuned this, and this is also great because it's flexible in that way. When a mentor raises a flag and says, hey, Johnny's having issues in his biology class and has, needs help with, I know, has failed a couple tests. So that flag gets raised, and the way that we have it set up is that it automatically copies our student success specialists who provide that type of academic support. And then we can also flag our tutorial center. And so in the beginning, we just had all the flags going directly to the different departments. And then we realized that, as our mentors are learning, some of the flags may have not been may not have been like an emergency status, right? In the mind of the mentor, it was. So what we do now is that those flags come to our staff and they kind of do the triage. And then if it's something that we need to send to the other department for backup, we will. Or if it's something that maybe it raises awareness for us that maybe our mentors need some training on this topic, or how do we get them the information that they can then share with the student, as Joe was talking about a little bit earlier. And so that has really allowed us to be mindful of more students, right, in an efficient way.
So just to help paint that picture, Gabriella, using an example, it sounds like if a mentee was struggling with anxiety or mental wellness challenges, if that were to come up in conversation with the mentor could submit a flag that would go to your team instead of just copying the wellness folks. And then they could then provide some context, and maybe the wellness office then sends links that make it to the mentor versus them just getting all of this data and chiming into the mentee directly. Is that how you have it set up?
Yes, definitely. And it also allows us, even on campus, from one department to another, right, to close that loop. And then we're able to then log that information in our records too, just to make sure that when we follow up with the student later on, we can kind of circle back and check in on the original question or concern that was brought up.
Thank you. Which is a good segue to the question we usually get next, which is, what are the parameters of being a mentor? Like, what do you do and what do you learn as a mentee? And this can differ from institution to institution. We work with 350 different colleges and universities, and everyone has kind of a different idea or definition of what a mentor is. Can you tell us a little bit about how you frame mentors to your mentors and how their roles might even differ in your mentor pool?
Yeah, so this last year, we intentionally recruited from our first year students at the end of the year. So about now, we're going to start recruiting mentors for next year. And so we pull from our first year students to then support who will become second year students, right? To support the incoming class. And that has worked really well. We have this year we had 17 mentors that were working on average about 5 hours a week. Next year, we're going to experiment with a different model and do less mentors, between 6 and 8 possibly, and then have them work the full 20 hours a week that they can work as students. We're going to experiment with that model as well. As one of the great things about, as we've been talking about Mentor Collective and our peer mentoring model, and from attending workshops and meetings, I'm hearing about everyone else's approaches, and so we're gonna try a smaller group, but with a bigger caseload, and see how that works for us next year. And our students are paid through they're set up through our HR department, so they're student workers on campus. In the past, we have been able to utilize students who had transferred out, maybe were first year transfer students and that could still support our first and second year students. But due to some changes in policy in our office or the HR area, we're not able to do that anymore. So we're really just focusing on students that are currently enrolled and on campus to support our first year students.
Great. And yeah, usually the question we get next is, well, okay, it sounds like you pay mentors. What does that look like? Do you have someone running payroll? And every model is a little bit different, right? You all do, because there's funding to do that, but we also have community college programs that offer a credential, which we help provide. Mentor Collective, that goes directly on their LinkedIn as soon as they complete training. There's other modules they can complete along the way, like on diversity, equity, inclusion, or having difficult conversations. That could also be a resume booster for both mentees and mentors. And when we do research, like we've done at Hartnell over the years, and we ask mentors, would have you done this for free? And I know you've asked your mentors this as well. We usually hear, yes, my reason for doing this wasn't the pay. That helps me spend more time because I'm a busy college student. But my reason for doing this was I want to give back. I didn't like all the hoops I had to jump through to figure things out. When I was a first year student, I want to eliminate some of those for the students coming in, and then I want them to pay it forward as well. So that's usually the motivation. And then the pay, if it is available, either as a stipend or as a student employee, usually helps students to justify that. Is that kind of how you position this, Gabriella?
Definitely. And then I'd also like to add that for our students, they complete the Mentor Collective onboarding. We also require them to do the DEI module as well as part of their paid, training to get them onboarded and launched. And then we do offer bi-weekly meetings with one of our faculty mentors, with just the mentors, to discuss what issues they're seeing come up. Are they experiencing any challenges in getting students to respond? What approach have you taken, right? So we're supporting them as well in their own leadership and professional growth, as they go through the year, supporting their first year students.
Yep.
The hybrid approach.
Excellent. So I want to pause here to have people type in any questions that we haven't got to yet. I want to go back to one that we haven't answered yet, that asked about when we shared the completion and retention data, Gabriella. Someone wanted to know, how do you kind of account for self-selection bias? You all have a lot of financial interventions, right? How do you know those aren't the reason someone's persisting versus mentorship?
So that is a great question, and that's something that I am focusing on this year, because the data that we've been provided by our institutional research office on our program outcomes doesn't necessarily take into account the different interventions that students are taking advantage of. And so that's something that we're going to be digging down into and disaggregating more this summer, looking at this last year's data. And I'm excited to see what it's going to look like.
Yeah. that's exciting that you have, 5 years of data to go back and drill down into and look at the correlations between the different interventions that students are involved in. A lot of our partners also say, we're not trying to show causation. We're just trying to show broad trends and correlations. And if we know that if you're not in a mentoring program and you have a greater chance of stopping out, we can use that as well, because then we can go to those students and provide them more support, because statistically, whether it's self-selection bias or not, they're more at risk because they're not in a mentoring program. It's great. All right. So good segue to our next question. Were there any others folks
Yeah,
wanted
we
to?
have a couple more questions in the chat. One asked from Cal, this is to you, Gabriella. What percentage of your promised students make use of mentors?
This year, for our incoming class, it was about 35% who logged on or who opted in for the peer mentoring. And next year, our goal is to have 50% of our first time college students in the program take advantage of the peer mentoring.
That's helpful. And then the last question is, on average, what's the caseload of the mentors? So what do you require in terms of mentors to be engaged with mentees? What's the expectation?
So our mentors are given, right now we have our max set at 25 mentees per mentor. And at the beginning, we say, hey, you're committing to about 5 hours of support. And then it just depends on the week. Sometimes there's points in the semester where we're reaching out to the students and really trying to engage them and pull them in. And then there's other peak times when we're getting into that, like this week, for example, where it's we're coming up on our drop deadline for classes, and we're at that crunch time for midterms and getting caught up on assignments. And so we see a lot more engagement than students reaching out to us and saying, hey, I'm in this situation. What do you recommend I do? Or who can I talk to about thinking about dropping this class? What should I do? And so there is that ebb and flow throughout the semester, but on average, it's about 5 hours a week.
Great. And given the folks that we have assembled here today, I know one of the questions that comes up a lot is like, this sounds great to me. How do I convince, the powers that be? How do I convince others in leadership at the college that this is worth it? That this is one of the things that we should be investing in? Has mentorship at scale for thousands of students been worth the investment?
I think it has been. I think if we go to our next slide, you can see the impact, right, of what we've been able to do since we launched the program. To date, we have over 1,600 students that we've been able to serve in the program, trained 207 peer mentors, and looking at the time saved for our staff. This year, we do have 2 full-time staff that are dedicated to the program, but in the past, it's been 1. And so having access to a platform that can allow us to serve this many students has been a game changer. In the portfolio of programs in my area, we do have other smaller programs that offer one-on-one mentoring, and that's a lot of that hand matching that happens, and that's successful too. But when we're looking at how do we scale our programs, something like Mentor Collective has really made that possible for us.
Great. And if anyone has questions on these numbers or how you can get something like this to scale or what it's looked like, feel free to type it in now. But one of the last questions we want to walk away with is, what do you want your peers to take away from this? I know you've touched on a lot, Gabriella, but anything else that you've learned from this 5 years of data?
I would say that just kind of following up on my previous point, that there's multiple ways that you can do this, that you can approach, and I'm sure if we all shared what our approaches have been on campus, they're going to be a little different, right? But being able to leverage technology to make this accessible for more students, to be able to tailor even the matching, right? In the matching process, you can ask, do you prefer to be matched with a mentor who has who shares a similar first language as you do, or a similar background, a similar major, right? So it gives our students the choice to, or the ability to connect on the points that they choose to, that are important to them. And then also being able to just access the data quickly, the dashboard data, the number of conversations that are taking place, what those topics are, how our students are feeling, right? So those, in our area, because we're working with a lot of different grant funded programs as well, I have to have access to data to do that grant reporting, and being able to do this on my own, being able to pull that has been a game changer as well. So I think having that real-time data, not only in terms of reporting, but also in terms of being able to provide relevant interventions for our students and at any point in the semester, and also just being able to really tailor the experience for each student has been very important for us.
Yep. Excellent. To add to that, I think when you were talking about how you have the triage set up for flags, when a mentor flags that a mentee has a challenge, it's beyond their role as a mentor. They're not supposed to be they're an advisor, right? They're not supposed to tell students to add and drop classes necessarily. They're supposed to get them to someone who can, and to point them towards resources to register and to encourage them to do that. So I think, the way you had it set up originally, where an advisor or someone in academic advising would get all of these flags and they're not sure what to do with them. Now they flow through you, but they are still copied on certain things. I think that's kind of the best of both worlds, right? You're connecting all these points of your ecosystem, your academic affairs, your student affairs, your financial aid, all together, but you're not just bombarding the student with things, right? Because when that happens, then they just shut down and don't do anything, right? I think that makes a lot of sense. The question that just popped into the chat, again, asking, has Hartnell done a regression analysis to show whether or not these increases in graduation rate were from financial incentives or not? Sounds like not yet, right? But more analysis on the way. All right. For those of you who want to learn more, you can scan the QR code on your screen here, download just a quick one-page white paper on some of the things we talked about in terms of the status quo of how mentorship exists typically within an institution, how it could exist, how to rethink some of these things that have been here a long time in institutions, and to say maybe there needs to be a new way to reach students, or a new way to measure things, or a new way to use some of this data. Feel free to scan that